Good afternoon, everybody. My topic is modified dual lung ventilation for minimally invasive esophagectomy in prone position. Minimally invasive esophagectomy in the prone position is well accepted. The one lung ventilation is considered as gold standard and is being practiced most commonly. However, potential physiological advantages of dual lung ventilation over one lung ventilation are being recognized now. The more commonly practiced one lung ventilation has a lot of disadvantages, namely ventilation perfusion mismatch, RV strain, low cardiac output, and need for inotropic support, and reperfusion injury, all will lead to conduit ischemia or acute lung injury. The key challenges in the current practice is normal conventional dual lung ventilation has high tidal volume and higher FiO2, and they use PEEP to the normal lung from the beginning. With the bronchial blocker, the slippage is more common, and it has poor lung isolation, 70% only, and there is more dislocation when you change the patient position. With high-frequency jet ventilation, it requires higher oxygen from the beginning, and anesthetic gas mixer can't be used in jet ventilation technique. So with these current practices, the complications are many, the recognition is very important, and management is challenging for anesthesiologists. With this, what way to go? We were practicing a dual lung ventilation almost for the past 15 years. In 2010, we changed our technique to modified dual lung ventilation. Is this because of this article by Kilpatrick et al. In BJA 2010? They highlighted that non-physiological ventilation will lead to acute lung injury in normal lungs. And they also highlighted the first hit and second hit lung injuries. Based on this, we adopted a modification in our dual lung ventilation to observe, analyze, and measure the outcomes in terms of respiratory variations, hemodynamic stability, change in surgical variability, and postoperative complications. This is a prospective observation study of 46 consecutive patients who underwent prone transthoracic esophagectomy between 2010 to 2013 in a tertiary care GI center in India. Based on the previous findings, we formed a protocol with a default intraoperative settings with a tidal volume of 6 ml per kg body weight, a respiratory rate of 20 ml 20 per minute with a FiO2 of 0.4 with 0 PEEP. The CO2 insufflation pressure to start with is 8 millimeter of mercury. We used volume controlled ventilation for all patients. The anesthetic remains the standard GA with thoracic epidural for post-op pain relief. And the monitoring, we do ABG monitoring at specified intervals along with conventional monitoring. This is our protocol. In this picture, you can see the patient is in prone position with right arm abducted and elbow flexed at 90 degrees. The surgeon stands on the right side of the patient and monitor on the left side of the patient. The anesthesia monitor on the head end of the patient. You can see the thoracoscopic duration is 88 minutes with a standard deviation of 34 minutes. McEwen was the predominant procedure followed by Ivor Lewis. This box plot chart shows that purple, violet color, that is median value. You can see that O2 saturation and PO2 throughout the study period, they were above the critical value of 90 and here 60. This is oxygenation. When you come to ventilation part, you can see the pH ranges between 7.25 to median value, 7.25 to 7.35. In PCO2 value, you can see it is varies between median values 45 to 60 millimeter of mercury throughout the period. When you compare ETCO2 with ABG data, this ABG CO2 level correlates well with our PCO2 level in the blood, but not the ETCO2. In terms of respiratory variations, 7% of the patient had significant hypercarbia with hypoxemia, which required change in ventilatory settings. 4% of the patient had isolated hypoxia, but 35% of the patient had a hypoxia because of contralateral pleural breach with capnothorax. But none of the patients had a critical peak airway pressure of more than 35 centimeters of water. In terms of hemodynamic variation, 20% of the patients had a significant hypertension, which required nitroglycerin infusion. Low MAP occurred in 52% of the patient. It's a transient one. We maintained with IV fluids and incremental doses of IV effortin. But none of the patients had a significant persistent hypotension, which required an inotropic support. Bradycardia noted in 9% of the population, which required atropine. Tachycardia noted in 15% of the population, which required IV beta blocker. 4% of the patient had atrial fibrillation during surgery, which required IV beta blocker along with amiodarone infusion. In terms of surgical variation, surgery was interrupted in 7% of the patient population. Change in surgical strategy noted in 9% of the patient population. Insufficient pressure increased to 10 millimeter of mercury in 35% of the patient population, but none of the patients had an open conversion surgery. In terms of postoperative complications, leak occurred in 13.66%. Recurrent laryngeal nerve injury occurred in 15.9%. Pulmonary complications were totally 15.8% of the patients. Arrhythmia and MI occurred in 6.81% and 4.54% respectively. Conduit necrosis and death occurred in 2.2% of the patients. Re-exploration done in 6.81% of the patient population. Studies mentioning the safety of DLV exist, but they have used higher tidal volume, higher FiO2, and application of PEEP to normal lung from the beginning of thoracoscopy itself. The MDLV technique has not been reported. To summarize my talk, the main driving force of oxygen into the tissues, that is PO2, it remained fairly consistently same throughout the procedure. But when it comes to terms of pH and PCO2, O2 saturation, though range varied, it were in acceptable range. Hypercarbic acidosis was well tolerated. When compared to ETCO2, ABG monitoring is better during thoracoscopic procedure. Any sudden hypoxia or hypercarbia, it indicates, strongly correlates well with pleural breach on the opposite side. This pleural breach significantly produced respiratory acidosis, but without significant changes in the surgical approach or hemodynamic parameters. ICD incision mandated in few patients who had persistent hypoxemia or tension capnothorax. The pleural injury invariably ends up in postoperative ventilatory support. To conclude my topic, MDLV for prone position minimally invasive echotomy is technically feasible and safe. It has distinct physiological advantage to the anesthesiologist, and it carries ergonomic advantage to the surgeon. It has low incidence of intraoperative and postoperative surgical complications with comparable surgical outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the floor?